there's like 3 or 4 players that we have to talk about because the way in which they're performing not only is putting their organizations in tough predicaments, but more than likely it will change the landscape of the NBA very soon. A shout out to Swish Out. He actually beat me to the punch. I thought I was going to be the first and only YouTuber to talk about this article that crawled on my timeline from ESPN discussing how the trade value of Ja Morant, Trae Young, and LaMelo Ball is all the way in the dirt.
Do y'all believe that to be true?
No.
Yeah, Swish Out was first. Oh, never mind.
No.
He actively showed his video.
They're negative. For Zion, maybe. LaMelo? No.
I don't think LaMelo's is in the dirt. I don't think Trey's is in the dirt. Trey's might be near the dirt, but I don't think it's in the dirt. And I think, that's probably it. I think Zion's is in the dirt.
I think if like the trade was to actually go through, a lot of people for a lot of the players mentioned would be like, "Damn, that's all you got." Like that's where I'm at with it.
So who do you think has the most and the least amount of trade value in that collection? That 4 people collection.
LaMelo, Zion, Trae, and who's the last one? Ja.
Ja.
Zion, Trae, and Ja.
I'm gonna say LaMelo has the most trade value.
Would it be?
I don't think
I think the healthiest player would have the most trade value. So
Trae Young.
That's really what
Trae Young.
Is Trae healthier than LaMelo right now?
Yes.
Historically speaking, yes.
I'm talking historically speaking, by the way, too. So.
Oh yeah, historically. But...
Well, I guess it'll be Trae then Ja because Ja didn't. It was recent when he started really getting injured, but yeah, Trae.
Trae has played. I mean, this is compared. It's last year 76, the year before that 54, but 73, 76, 63, 60, 81. And this year he's a little bit, banged up or whatever the case may be. Ja is the other person. I'm just looking at all his seasons. 12, 50, 9, 61, 57, 63, 67. I'm definitely not going to do Zion. I'll just do LaMelo because Zion's not even in the conversation. LaMelo Ball 16, 47, 22, 36, 75, 51.
I think for Ja, I'm more concerned about his lack of improvement in year 7 more than anything, specifically the jump shot.
Let's get back into the video.
Read that article and my team did a little bit more research. Not only did I have to agree with the article at large, but also, bro, the Grizzlies, Hawks, and Hornets, bro, they're going to have to make a decision sooner than later when it comes to the direction of their franchises. And matter of fact, you might as well throw Zion in this equation with the Pelicans because, boy, the way in which he's playing and how everything is still unraveling out in New Orleans and how bad they are, a lot of tough decisions are going to have to happen very, very soon. Now, originally, my approach to this video was going to be a bit more nuanced, but I do believe it's very important for you to acknowledge some very key information that I've gathered first before we get into the meat and the potatoes of this video. So before
Jack in our swag.
we get to the nuance, let me freestyle for you a little bit. First, we have to acknowledge that all 4 of these players have been terrible to start the season. And no, that's not me just being overreactionary to their bad start and potentially not giving them enough grace moving forward. No, the truth of the matter is that all 4 of these teams are in situations to where they need their star players to play a certain caliber of basketball to kind of figure out what's the next step throughout the course of the franchise history. And all 4 of these players have been underwhelming and flat out terrible to start the year. Some of these players we don't really need to go into that much nuance about. We talked about Ja Morant and how disinterested he is with some of the offensive sets and overall minutes he's received. This has resulted in a really bad stat line of only 18 points, 7.5 assists, a bunch of turnovers and shooting splits that are just laughable. Zion, Ja Morant's draft class mate, is also putting up really bad numbers as well, at least relative to what he normally was able to produce. 22 points, 5 to 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and shooting splits of only 51% from the field and 72% from the free throw line. Some of you may think to yourself, well, 50% isn't that bad from the field. However, take into consideration that most of Zion's shots, of course, come right at the basket, and it's very concerning that he is barely scratching.
You know what's another one? Like, because we thought Zion was going to have monster development too. We're off on that as well.
Yeah. After seeing what's supposed to be Zion's most healthy year not be healthy, I'm fully off of it now. I ain't gonna lie. I'm done.
Yeah, I've been done with Zion, so this is nothing new for me. I was saying trade him a year or 2 ago.
Somebody even in the chat said Zion ain't hit 1-3. Zion, I would even want to put money over under 12 shots outside of like the restricted area. That sounds crazy. Not the restricted area, but just the paint as a whole. Like I wouldn't even think that he's put up that many shots outside of the paint as a whole. Do y'all think their lack of development, because we're seeing players like come into the league and their development just lapped them. What do y'all think that is?
Health. I think health for a lot of them is holding them back from developing. I don't think people realize how hard it is to actually grow when you're constantly rehabbing. Especially speaking for LaMelo and Zion specifically, because I feel like out of the whole group, they've played the least in their career. Genuinely, it's hard to develop when training camp time comes around and you're ramping up to get back into basketball shape because you've been rehabbing. When you're constantly rehabbing, especially the same type of injuries, you're constantly rehabbing the same thing. How are you supposed to get better? So that would be my first answer to why there's a lack of development. And then second, when it comes to Trae Young, you strong arm a franchise, so you don't have to develop. They don't hold you accountable. When a franchise doesn't hold their asset accountable to get better, they stagnate and just be who they want to be and do what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, we can even bring up the poster child of injuries, unfortunately, like Derrick Rose. Like, after his 2011 season and after all those injuries, the conversation was always about, can he get back to 2011 D Rose? But mind you, like, if he didn't get injured, the conversation really should be like, where does his game go? Like, what's the next step for his game? We never even got to that conversation with Derrick Rose. It was just about, can he get back to 2011? And then can he improve on his game? I think same thing with Zion. Like, the conversation now is, can he get back to college Zion, to rookie Zion? We're not even talking about his improvements as a playmaker. Can he develop a shot? Can he add more skill, improve defensively? We're just like, can we just see college Zion back? Which is insane, but here we are.
I mean, that's what this was supposed to be. And the fact that he's not as big as he was, which I don't think people are talking about for why his field goal percentage is as bad as it is. He's not able to get through people how he was before because he's smaller. He actually like the weight was a part of his game. It helped his strength. He shed that weight. Now he's not as strong. It's not as easy to get by people. It seems like and also with the injuries, his athleticism slowed down. He took some steps down because he's constantly injured. So he's not as explosive as he should be.
I just wanted to show y'all this real quick. Zion Williamson's shot chart this year. That is 1, 2, 3. Oh, it actually shows it. Okay. It doesn't show the shot clock though. I wish it showed the shot clock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots. Technically, this one's outside of the paint, but you see where it is. And then these are like toe on the lines. But 6 shots outside the paint this year. Can't be a winning player doing stuff like that. Gonna skip ahead a little bit in this video.
Blossoming on your roster. I think by far the best example of this is what's going on in Atlanta. I am actually shocked how good Jalen Johnson is to start the season. Not to say that I didn't see any of the promise, the potential, not to say that he's not a young player that has been emerging over the past 2 years. I'm not saying it at all, but the way in which he is composing himself from a scoring perspective, he's a really good defender, especially at the age, but the overall passing, playmaking, kind of table setting for what this team may need really does have me taking a step back and asking myself, wow, if the team can look this good and they're winning games still without Trae Young, what exactly is the purpose of Trae Young? Especially when you take into consideration that defensively, this is the best the Hawks have ever looked during the Trae Young era. And we all know having Trae Young on the floor and the makeup of this roster is specifically meant for Trae Young to be hid defensively. But what if you can put out a lineup where you don't have to hide anyone defensively at all, and you can just go out there with young athletic wings, players who are dynamic, players who can run up and down the floor, and players who are not a defensive liability? Bro, what if you're able to run a lineup like that, still go out there and win games, maybe not be anywhere near close offensively that you are with Trae Young, but you're still a productive team, which is something that cannot be said over the past handful of seasons, or at least not consistently enough for the Hawks to reach consistent playoff status. That's very, very telling. And again, shout out to Jalen Johnson, because I genuinely believe his emergence into a fringe all-star caliber player, but I genuinely believe someone who's averaging 23, 10, and 7. Like, I think that player should be able to make the all-star game. That caliber of star, if you're telling me you can have that player and everybody else is also producing at a really high level, it kind of does beg the question, like, why exactly do we need Trae Young? You can then go to New Orleans and kind of ask yourself the exact same thing. Bro, it doesn't matter if Zion is playing or not playing, they're still losing games. And as we all know over the past couple seasons, bro, Zion isn't healthy and available anyway. And even though, yes, he has lost a lot of weight, and even though, yes, he came into training camp looking ready to go, it seems as if like the loss of weight has potentially negatively impacted his productivity. He's not finishing the same. He's not as aggressive anymore. And even with the loss of weight, he still doesn't have the defensive motor that you would want out of him anyway. But
so then let me ask y'all this last question. At this point, because there is like a lot of evidence out there, and I actually do think it's very telling that they do have young stars who have produced more, who have developed more, surrounding these guys that have been touted as star players, drafted as star players, have been posed as star players. Why are these franchises still hanging on to these guys?
I don't know, Amar. I mean, I agree. I mean, listen, man, we was there when we got Jalen Johnson on the Hawks. We was there at the ground floor. We seen the potential. Don't shake your head. We was on this pod, and I asked you day one, how do you feel about Jalen? Because our guy is going to be great. But I don't know what it's literally politics. It has to be politics. That's the only thing keeping these players on these teams. They were paid X amount of money. They had X amount of expectation. So they are getting a great amount of grace to still be the guy on the team. Also, it is probably hard to get them off of a team because they're so hurt. Especially talking about LaMelo and Zion. LaMelo and Zion, and then Ja Morant because of his antics and him getting suspended or hurt. It's hard to move these guys because can you move an injured player?
Bezos, how much do you factor in the whole concept of, well, he's a franchise guy. Like he sells tickets, sells jerseys. How much does that matter in this conversation?
I'm not gonna lie, a lot. I feel like that's the main reason they can't really move or have a lot of hesitancy to move off these people. Like, especially for small franchises, it's so hard to have a franchise start to build around where it's so clear cut that we're building around this person. For you to trade that away and try to go through the lottery, something that's literally called the lottery, and then draft someone that could even be a fraction of how good the past player was. I mean, that's a dice that you roll that doesn't necessarily pan out for everyone. But with the amount of talent in the league, maybe teams shouldn't be as afraid as they used to be. But yeah, I mean that's the real reason. Like if you give up LaMelo, what are the chances of you running into another LaMelo? The chances are, just statistically speaking, it's not that high. So
some would say that, but then some would say we have Con Knippel.
And I actually do think that that's interesting that like pretty much all these teams, except for like maybe Memphis, since they've drafted their guys, have had another guy in a weaker class who is touted as a lesser star come up behind them and develop more, shown to be able to carry more of a load, et cetera, et cetera. Hawks got Jalen Johnson. Hornets have both Brandon Miller and Con Knippel. Pelicans have like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones in that conversation and stuff like that, who people would probably in 2025 say they would probably in 2025 say that are more valuable than their guy. I know some people say Crowder and stuff like that and Edey, but I might the way that y'all playing, I might put Crowder and Edey in that same conversation. It's just interesting that a team just won't do a full-on ditch if it could make their team a more competitive 8th seed or more competitive 7th seed. Because like I think in the from the perspective of like a Hawks fan, that's where I sit. Like the difference between a Jalen Johnson led Hawks team and a Trae Young led Hawks team this specific year is still like play-in stuff, but I think that they would be a more competitive play-in team without Trae Young than a more competitive playoff team with that.
But how are the jersey sales for Jalen Johnson? Because then you have to bank on, and maybe for the Hawks it's easier. Y'all are competitive, so it makes more sense for y'all to either be a low playoff, or even a play-in team. But the Grizzlies aren't looking like they're going to make the playoffs. At least maybe I need to relook, but I don't think the Grizzlies are in playoff contention. I know the Pelicans aren't in playoff contention. The Hornets aren't in playoff contention or play-in contention. So are we really willing to move off of our guys who are, for small franchises, selling jerseys at the very least, even if they're not getting butts and seats because they're hurt, selling jerseys? Are we really
24, 22? I just want to say 24-25, Ja Morant number 8th in jersey sales, LaMelo Ball 12th.
I think selling tickets will always outwell selling jerseys, though, if that's the conversation. And you sell more tickets when you win more. I mean, that's just my theory. Maybe I'm wrong. But because there's a theory that like people buy tickets to buy LaMelo specifically, to see LaMelo specifically, or Kyrie specifically. But I don't know. I feel like if I'm rooting for a franchise, like for example right now the Bulls, if I'm going to Chicago and I'm rooting for the Bulls, I don't really care how, like, if they have a franchise player or not. As long as the team's good, that's gonna make me want to watch them even more. So,
but do they trust the team to be good? Is what I was getting at with some of these teams. Like the Hornets, do they trust themselves to be a play-in team and sell those tickets for being competitive if LaMelo's not there? Do they trust Con Knipple and Brandon Miller to lead them there? Do the Pelicans know they're not going to be competitive, so they're banking on people trying to come see Zion when he's healthy or banking on his jersey sales. We get off of him, now we're just selling tickets, $2 entry tickets, and we're trying to get off the back of Derek Queen. We're trying to really push him to be the next guy, which he clearly is, but it's hard to sell that to the rest of the league because he's not a Vitch.
I just think, last thing I got to say, at some point that whole like star player, you can roll the dice. I'm a little bit off of that. And I've always thought that there was a difference between, so like there's a difference between a Luka Doncic and me having this conversation versus like a LaMelo Ball and having this conversation. But the way that NBA teams have been built over these past couple of years, the way that there's always been like a 6'8" guy, if we scouted properly, that can handle the ball and playmaking, all that stuff that's just popped up year in and year out. I'd rather roll the dice on that for the next 2-3 years as opposed to being hamstrung because LaMelo Ball drives the gold Lamborghini around town and it looks cool and all this other stuff like that. Granted, some franchises haven't made it work just yet because I know the Nets had a plethora of draft picks as well, and none of those guys look like guys. But every single year it seems like, and I know he's kind of regressed, there's a Giddey, there's a Denny Avia, there's just some guy out there, a Crowder. There's somebody somewhere that's popping up. And again, I'd rather kind of roll the dice on that than relying on like a Trey or whoever. Just not with it.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair.
I'm not with it.